Hello, and welcome to Page Chewing Weekly Pulls, episode 8. Thank you for coming by, and apologies for missing last week. I was on the road in Houston, Texas for the Anime Matsui conference. Lots of fun, met some really awesome people, attended a couple of panels, met some artists there, and my weakness is artwork. So I can usually walk past most booths, but when there's artwork involved, it's my Achilles heel, and my wallet is not happy, but I'm happy. So I also met some artists there that I invited on the podcast for interviews, and I'm excited to talk about that more when I get those confirmed. So excited about that. So I love talking to people and getting to know them and hearing about their experiences and learning more about their work. So that's something I'm really excited about. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, I should probably open with this. My name is Steve, and I used to be an avid comic book reader. I took a long time off, and now I'm getting back into the format, and I'm looking for books to read. So I'm getting into books that I'm trying to find places to jump on. So each week I go to my local comic book shop and search online to buy digital when I can, if it's not at the comic book shop. And so I go by and pick up some issues, and I come by the podcast and I discuss it and tell you if I'm going to continue reading it or not. I'm not the type to force myself to read a book, even if it's popular or if a lot of people are reading it and really loving it. If I don't love it, I'm not going to read it. I don't want to hate read anything or become bitter. And I don't think most people really want to hear negativity all the time. I guess some people do, but I want to talk about books that I really love, that I'm really enthusiastic about. So that's kind of my approach to the podcast. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you are a listener, thank you for coming back again for another week of hearing me ramble about nonsense. So really appreciate it. So, in the previous weeks, I had picked up a few of the Night Terrors books, and I was going to read a couple of them, the main series especially. I'm going to be honest, I fell off of that event. I was a little bit burnt out. There's so many books. There's so many things that I just wasn't crazy about. And I just I'm done. So I didn't pick up any Night Terrors books. I typically, for those of you who are new, I typically gravitate more towards the indie side and less with the capes and cowls. I do read some superhero books sometimes, but not too often. So, and a lot of it is continuity. I just get lost in all the continuity, and it's difficult for someone to jump in and know what's going on sometimes without knowing the previous events and what set up this or set up that. So anyway, we'll get into this week's books. Speaking of continuity, so the first one is Star Wars Dark Droids #1. This is by Charles Soule and art by Luke Ross. This is by Marvel Comics. It's funny that I talk about continuity and not able to jump into a book because not knowing what's happening. So I'm not too familiar with Star Wars. I know the basics, I guess. And there was an event, I guess, that happened recently that set this book up. But in Dark Droids, the tagline is an ancient evil has awakened, and it is inhabiting droids. And I don't really know what set this up, but I do like where it's going. I think droids in the Star Wars universe are typically like background, like furniture. Like we don't really pay much attention to them. They're kind of off doing their own mundane tasks, and you don't really care about them too much. And there are a few that you care about, that you become attached to, but for the most part, they're like background noise, So in this one, this ancient evil is inhabiting these droids and making them do things. And I think that's a great way to infiltrate or sabotage. I think that's a really interesting concept, because who would suspect a droid would be able to do all these things that they're doing? And it seems like a perfect way, a perfect lack of security in droids to use them for your own means. It seems like something we should have done previously. Maybe it has been done. So in this one, this ancient evil is inhabiting these droids and making them do things, and I do like the themes of where it's going. Some of these droids are becoming self-aware or able to feel emotions, and I know some people called this book silly. Some of the other reviews I read was calling this book silly, but I thought it was kind of neat. I don't know. I think it's a fun approach and something I never really thought of, to use droids for these means. So it's enough for me to continue reading, and I'm trying to jump onto these Star Wars books, trying to find one that I enjoy. There's a few that have been pretty good, and this is one of them. I thought it was good. I'm not crazy about it, but it was enough for me to pick up issue 2, and yeah, I'm on board with it. The second book from this week is one that I really enjoyed the first issue, which is Antarctica issue 2. This is written by Simon Burks and art by Willie Roberts. This is by Image Comics. Now, issue 1, what really stood out to me was the character work. I think I became really attached to the character. I liked the background, what she's been through. I liked kind of knowing where her head is, her past, and why she does the things that she does. And the first issue ends really with a tease of where this story may go, which is like parallel universes, maybe time travel. Don't really know, but I think there's more here to explore, and I really like that. I'm a sucker for these types of stories, and the way that issue 1 ended, I was really excited for issue 2. Issue 2, while it was fine, it felt a little bit disjointed for me. It felt like we jumped around a lot, and while it's focused more on moving the plot forward and less on the characters, which is fine, it just didn't feel like I didn't have a pace. Like I couldn't, sometimes you read a book or you watch a movie or whatever it is, and you just don't feel like you have a pace, and you just don't feel comfortable. Like you don't feel like there's a pace to it. And that's what happened in this one. There is one major problem that gets solved pretty quickly, or at least there is an idea of what the solution is. And I thought that was kind of strange. I thought that was a little quick to solve such a major problem. But yeah, I think this issue was fine. I like the artwork. It's enough for me to continue reading it. I do like these types of stories. So while issue 2 is a bit of a letdown, I am on board. I'm going to continue reading this series. I think there's lots of potential. I like what they're setting up, and I'm hopeful that they can pull it off. These stories aren't always easy to pull off and make sense of them, but I'm hopeful. I'm encouraged. So we'll continue reading that one. Another book that I really enjoyed, issue 1, and I was excited for issue 2, is The Lonesome Hunters, The Wolf Child #2. Now, this one, I love the artwork and the aesthetic on this one. It really fits the story, and the work that Tyler Crook is doing. This is by Dark Horse Comics too, by the way. The work that Tyler Crook is doing, he's doing the script and the artwork, and he must be a busy person because doing a spectacular job. I really loved it. Now there's a large story that's being told, but it's being told in different sets of characters. There's different groups of characters that we bounce back and forth from, and that may sound like too much. Sometimes that's also hard to do when you have groups of characters that are all collectively moving the plot and the narrative forward. It's not always easy, because sometimes a group here and there feels like, why are they here? They don't add anything to the story. But every group that we follow brings something to the story. They add bits and pieces. And I think part of what makes this book special to me is that we're always getting bits and pieces. We're always moving forward. You never feel like it's a waste, like we're wasting time. While it's a slow drip, it's enough to keep us in the story, because you get bits and pieces of everything. You start to get a better view of the bigger picture. And I don't want to know everything right away. I want it to build suspense. I want to build anticipation. I want that build up. I want to be able to speculate and to talk to people about it and say, what did this mean? Or where do you think this is going? Or what's this person doing? And there's lots of weird shit going on. There's lots of weird stuff happening, and I'm not sure what's going on, but I have faith that this is going to work out. Like I said, all of it's interesting. All of it is coming together. And yeah, I'm really loving this book. I think it's very, 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 very good. And like I said, it's the slow drip is really, it's hard to do. It's hard to do that, but I think this book is pulling it off, and I am excited to see where the story goes, and I'm excited to see about what's being developed and the larger themes and story that are being played with here. So yeah, The Lonesome Hunters, The Wolf Child #2, another good book. Really solid week this week. Actually, the last 2 weeks. Some of these books may be from the previous week since I missed last week, so bear with me. The next book is The Cull #1, and this is book 1 of 5. And this is by Kelly Thompson and art by Matea de Lulis. Hope I didn't mispronounce her name. I apologize if I did. This is by Image Comics. In this one, 5 friends join up to set out to film a movie, and that's the setup for this one. The artwork is very, very sleek, very shiny, very polished, and I'm not always a big fan of this type of artwork, but this one I thought was pretty good. It leans into it, and the artwork does a lot of the heavy lifting. A lot of great panels, a lot of great pages, a lot of great layouts that tell us a lot without any text. And when your artwork can really breathe like that, and you have faith in the reader and faith in the artist, you let the artist do their work, sometimes one panel can tell us more about a character or about a situation or about history or about the story than a block of text can. So it is again not always easy to do, but this book does it really well. And there's 5 different characters that we follow that we're involved with, and each character gets we just get bits and pieces of each character because we can't learn everything about them in one issue, so we get a little bit of each one. Some of them we get a little bit more, but not a ton. So it's enough to make you care about them, but we know very little, but we have an idea. So that's another thing that I thought they did a good job with. And again, the artwork does a lot of heavy lifting. This one, in the first few pages, there is some Lovecraftian stuff going on that I'm a sucker for, and I'm going to be, I was excited to see that. By the end of the book, I'm just not sure this book is for me. And while it's done well, the writing, the art, like I said, all of it was done well, but I'm just not sure it's for me. And I can recognize that a book is good. It's just not my cup of tea. I'm not sure that this isn't yet, but I'm a little bit concerned. Well, I can say it's done well. It may not be for me, but I'm going to give it another issue, see where it goes, see what kind of where this, how this starts to develop. And I think by issue 2, we'll have a good idea of what the story's about, because we get the very tail end of it is a big discovery. The characters discover something, and it's going to change a lot. So we'll see how issue 2 goes. But like I said, good issue, just not sure it's for me. We'll find out. We'll give it some time. Now the next one is Red Sonja issue 2. This is by Dynamite Comics. It's written by Turan Gronbeck and art by Walter Giovanni. Now, I'm new to Red Sonja. This is the first series I've read. I know nothing about the history. I know nothing about what happened previously. I don't know much about her other than she's a female Conan. And that's enough for me to get into it. Now, issue 2 starts off right where issue 1 ended. And Red Sonja can't even take a break, grab a beer, and have a relaxing few minutes. Someone or a group of people are always trying to kill her. So it's not a good way to live. Sometimes you just have to leave people alone while they're having a drink. For this one, we start to learn more about the world and more about the antagonist. Like I said, I don't know anything about this world, so I'm not sure if this is a known character. But I feel like this book so far has been friendly for new readers like me, because I don't feel lost. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I'm just learning as I go, discovering characters in the world as I go. So if you're like me and new to Red Sonja, I think it's so far, as far as I can tell, a good jumping on point for readers like me who want to jump on and give it a shot. The artwork is great. It's pretty consistent. There's a couple of things that were inconsistent, but nothing major. My only complaint, and this is something that with me personally, is that when, and especially fantasy, like medieval fantasy, when characters use modern terms or modern phrases, and it didn't happen a lot, like I said, the minor gripe, but when they use modern phrases, it takes me out of the story. There's also a couple of kind of cheesy one-liners that, again, I'm just not a big fan of. But again, minor gripe. The rest of it was great. Yeah, I think it's a solid book, and the fantasy aspects is hard too because you don't want to give us too much when especially in fantasy, it's tricky to develop a world but not develop it too fast and not to overwhelm the reader with it. So I think this is rolling out at a nice pace, not overwhelming. It's just kind of letting the story and the characters and everything breathe, and that's not always easy to do, especially in fantasy. So I do enjoy that about this one. Yeah, another solid book, and I am on board with the Red Sonja, this series. Now, the next one was almost my pick of the week. It was the last book I read this week, and the book that I read before that was my pick of the week, and I had my mind made up on the pick of the week after I read the pick of the week. This one gave me pause and made me think, but it couldn't quite take that number one spot, but still really good. It's probably my second favorite book of the week, and that is The Madness by J. Michael Straczynski, art by David Lorenzo and Marcelo Maiolo. This is published by AWA, and this is issue 1 of 6. Now, I knew nothing. Like I said, I went into this one completely blind. This one starts off with it being a one last job and then I can retire kind of story. Whenever I see those stories, I always get nervous because it's hard to pull off. I'm very picky with the one last job and I'm done kind of thing. One last thing and then I can retire and sail off in the sunset, because you know it's never going to work out. But sometimes it's not. It's hard to pull off. I'm a little picky with it. This one, we follow Sarah Ross, and she is a Robin Hood type of character, and she has superpowers, but there's limitations. So when I say limitations, I mean she's not a Superman, Superwoman type of thing where she can do everything. She has certain powers, but when she's using one power, she's left vulnerable in other ways. So if she's using one thing, then it leaves her vulnerable. She has to choose her powers specifically for each situation and know situationally which one to use. And you get the impression that she is not invincible. If she doesn't do everything correctly, then she's in trouble, which again is something that I enjoy. Now something that made me roll my eyes with this one a little bit, but I'll explain in a minute why this made more sense at the end of the issue, is that she's this Robin Hood type of character, and she doesn't use any weapons. She doesn't use any guns, any other weapons. She just uses her fists, and when people get in her way, she just beats them up. She punches them in the face until they give up. Now, even going against an army of highly trained mercs, she just goes in and just punches things. And that, again, it was like, okay, sure. But I'll explain in a minute why that made sense by the end of the issue. And I'll try not to spoil anything if you haven't read it. Now, on this one, what I really liked about it, what really set me off, and it seemed to go explore a different level, was that once the job happens, it's a big job, right? It's something major that she does, that she pulls off, or she tries to pull off. And when something like this happens, of course, there's going to be ripples. There's going to be fallout of someone rich and powerful losing a lot of their wealth or a lot of their resources. And what I liked about this one is that after the job, there's political fallout, and you start to see how someone wealthy and powerful has influence over politics, over foreign policy, over governments, over people maneuvering, over elections, over over decision making of politicians that want to keep their status or want to look good or want to protect their troops or whatever it may be. So it wasn't a ton, but it was enough for me to really, I really enjoyed those sections of this job happened and then there's fallout, because of course there would be when someone loses this much money. So because of that, the story starts off as a one last heist and then I'm done. And it turns into a revenge story, is what it sounds like. And there's also another group of superheroes that are, influenced, let's say, by the government. and they are also in the mix now because of the fallout. And you see some of those decisions being made on how to handle this quietly or how to save face by the politicians, and I think that was all done really well. I really like that part of it because you don't get that a ton. You don't get that a whole lot. So the reason I said earlier about me rolling my eyes a little bit over the I don't kill anyone comment is because by the end of the story, you know that the character is going to evolve, going to change a lot. So I think it's a good way for us to know where the character starts, and I think where the character ends is going to be a very, very different place. So looking back on it, when I was done with the issue, I thought, okay, that made sense because they're setting this up to see for us to get where her mind is, what her values are, what her approach to problems is. And I think by the end, or even by the end of this issue, it's going to be very different. So seeing that character journey through this next 5 issues is going to be very, very interesting. So I do like where this is going. I had a really good time with it. I want to see how the character develops and where the story goes. And again, how the politics and the fallout and all those other decision-making people fit into it. So the Madness #1, I liked it a lot. I think it was really good. Most other weeks, it would have been my pick of the week. But this week, we have a very, very special book. Probably one of my favorite of the year, if you had to ask me to pick my favorite book. Maybe because it's fresh, but I think this would be my favorite book of the year. And the book I'm talking about is Swan Songs #2. This is by W. Maxwell Prince and art by Casper Wingard. This is published by Image Comics. I really loved issue 1, and I was almost expecting a fall off in issue 2. I think I may not be alone in that. Let me know if you feel the same way, that you have a really great issue 1, and you kind of brace yourself for issue 2. You kind of expect to fall off. You kind of expect it to be not as good. You expect kind of a not necessarily disappointment, but you think you come out of the gate really strong. So issue 2 is going to have a fall. It's going to have a drop off. It's going to not be as good. Even if it's good, it won't be as good. Well, it is not the case with this one. Issue 2 is even better than issue 1. I loved it. And issue 2 is about the end of a marriage. And it's not too often that a book has an emotional response like this for me that this book has. So in this one, we follow a couple. The issue starts with they're ending their marriage, and we go through the history of learning how they met and kind of how they started off and how they were so in love, and they were always with each other, and they shared everything, and they were best friends, and they did everything together. And you see the journey that they take and how people change and feelings change and goals change and outlook changes. And it's just a really moving story about this couple, and you see them through the beginning of their relationship and how that evolves and how that develops and where they end up at the end or at the beginning of the issue. You see where it goes, and you get perspectives from each of them through each of their kind of different phases of their relationship, and they're different, what they both were thinking, or what they thought went wrong, or when it went wrong, or what happened that made it go wrong. And they go from loving each other to hating each other. And it explores all those different emotions of love and loss and life. And it's just it's a heavy book with heavy themes in it, but it doesn't feel heavy. And we do get glimpses of them in different genres fighting, battling it out. They go from loving each other to hating each other to missing each other or wondering what happened. Just a really moving book, and just really emotional. Some great emotional beats, but at the end, there's a few sections of exploring what love is and what it means, and man, it was just great. I loved it. I think it was really, really good. And for people who say that you can't get really moving emotional stories in this format need to read books like Swan Songs, because it really pulls the heartstrings, and it is a heartbreaking story, and I think all of us can relate to it in some way. So it is one of those things that everyone can relate to somehow, and it is just a spectacular book. The artwork is really great. The layouts are great. The different colors that are used for the dialogue, for the narrations are great, because you get blue and pink for each character. You get the different perspectives from each of them, and it is a hopeful and heartbreaking story by the end, and you feel both emotions at the end, and you wonder why do we do this to ourselves? But so yeah, just a great issue. Like I said, one of my favorite of the year. It's not too often that a book gets this kind of emotional response from me, but wow, this book is special. Really good stuff. Like I said, one of my favorite of the year as of now. It has to be probably my favorite of the year so far. Swan Songs number 2, and just wonderfully done. Just great. Wonderful. So those were my books this week. I hope all of you are doing great. Sorry I missed last week. I was doing, like I said, at the con, but glad to be back and talking with all of you, or whoever's out there listening. If you want to connect with me, the best place is on our forums at pagechewing.com. Our front page is a blog, a WordPress blog, and we have bloggers that post blogs are about books and other topics. Games, we do have a games section called Dice Chewing, and we also have a forum that if you aren't already a member, if you register, I do have to approve you manually. So sometimes it takes me a day or so, but I just do that to keep out the troublemakers. So if you'd like to connect with me, like to talk, recommend books to me, give me some feedback, let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. If you want to come by and discuss a book with me, let me know. We will set it up and we will make it happen. Also this week, we have our first discussion for Gideon Falls that will hit the podcast. We are reading that series now. Lots to talk about in that one. And also I will continue to be posting the Berserk discussions. We recorded volume 18 today. So I'm catching up, posting them on the podcast, and then it'll be a regular thing. So I'm just playing catch up as of now, but keep your ears peeled for those. Lots of good stuff coming up. So I hope you're all enjoying it. Like I said, if you have any feedback or anything, get in touch. All the links are in the description. I also have a couple of other podcasts, so go check those out if you're curious. Really appreciate it. And so until next time, hope all of you have a great week, whatever's happening with you. I hope everything is going well. And if it's not, then hang in there. Things will always get better. So hope everyone's having a great one. Thank you again for listening. I really, really appreciate it. And we will talk to everyone very soon.